GM executives weren't the only ones killing performance engines in Australia. What if I told you Ford had a secret weapon, a fire-breathing American V8 that was too powerful for its own good? And the police, the very people who needed speed, were banned from using it. This wasn't just another engine. This was Ford's 289 HiPo K-Code V8, a race-bred powerhouse that had no business being in a humble Aussie Falcon. But for a brief, glorious moment in the mid-60s it was. And then it vanished. Why? Because the cops couldn't handle it. Chapter 1. The secret weapon Ford tried to unleash. Ford Australia was under pressure. Holden was the national favourite, and Chrysler was tearing up the highways with its brutal, valiant V8s. If Ford wanted to win the horsepower war, it needed more than just a good car. It needed a weapon. Luckily, it had one. Backed by the muscle of Detroit, Ford had access to something its rivals didn't. The 289 cubic inch high-performance V8, also known as the K-Code. This engine wasn't just powerful, it was race-proven. In the US, it was helping Carroll Shelby's Mustang GT 350 dominate the tracks. In Australia, Ford had a wild idea. What if they dropped it into a Falcon? And not just any Falcon, the XP Falcon. A featherweight rear-wheel drive sedan fresh off a Wheels Car of the Year win in 1965. With sharp handling and clean lines, it was the perfect sleeper. Added 271 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and 312 pound-feet of torque at 3,400 RPM, mated to a close ratio top-loader 4-speed manual, and you had a potential monster. It featured a compression ratio of 10.5 to 1 and a solid lifter camshaft with a 0.46 0-inch valve lift. The 289 HiPo engine initially used a smaller 5-bolt bell housing in 1964, which was upgraded to a larger 6-bolt version in 1965 to help reduce noise, vibration, and harshness. It also featured a 28-ounce offset balance flywheel, a design used prior to 1982. Ford didn't want to just beat Holden. They wanted to embarrass them. So they decided to test their secret weapon where it mattered most, in the hands of the police. The plan was bold. Build a handful of prototype Falcon pursuit cars and hand them over to Victoria and New South Wales police departments. These cars would be wolves in sheep's clothing, capable of stalking the Hume Highway and chasing down anything short of a Bathurst contender. At least 5 XP Falcons were quietly fitted with the K-Code V8 and sent out for testing. Their mission? Become the fastest, most capable highway patrol cars the country had ever seen. And for a brief moment, it looked like they might succeed. Chapter 2. Power the Falcon couldn't handle. On paper, the HiPo Falcon was perfect. A lightweight Aussie sedan with a screaming American heart. What could go wrong? Everything. The moment testing began, the cracks started to show. Veteran officers were rattled by violent torque steer that yanked the steering wheel under throttle. The chassis twisted under pressure, making high-speed runs twitchy and unpredictable. Brakes faded after just one emergency stop, and the close ratio manual gearbox, most cops couldn't drive it smoothly, let alone in a chase. Then came the incident. Rumours still swirl about one prototype XP spinning out at high speed during testing, nearly killing its driver. It was the final straw. Transport authorities reportedly issued a blunt directive. This engine is unsuitable for pursuit use. The project was quietly shut down. No press releases, no explanations. Muscle car historians and old-school gearheads swear they were real, hidden in plain sight for a brief moment before vanishing into legend. The 289 HiPo was banned from Aussie police duty. Not because it lacked power, but because it had too much. Ford had dared to build a beast. But Australia wasn't ready to tame it. Chapter 3. Chaos behind the badge. Early reports from within the police forces painted a chaotic picture. Officers trained on tame 6-cylinders suddenly found themselves wrangling a 271 horsepower screamer with no traction control, no power steering, and no margin for error. The problems were immediate and dangerous. Doors creaked under stress, and panels shifted mid-corner. Suspension, bone stock coils, and leaf springs. Under chase simulation, the car understeered wildly and swayed like a fishing boat in a storm. One internal report from New South Wales Police described a terrifying incident. During a high-speed test, a K-Code XP reportedly lost grip and spun out at over 90 miles per hour. The officer survived, but the message was clear. This thing was fast, but it wasn't safe. Chapter 4. A transmission too far. The K-Code didn't just bring power, it brought complexity. Mated to a close ratio top-loader 4-speed manual, the HiPo XP Falcon demanded precision. This wasn't a cruiser you could throw into gear and coast. You had to drive it hard. Most patrol officers weren't trained for that. Missed shifts, engine stalls, burned out clutches. The transmission became a constant complaint. Even officers who loved the speed hated the effort. You didn't drive a K-Code Falcon, you wrestled it. Chapter 5. The Quiet Ban. Despite the warning signs, some at Ford and within the police still had hope. Maybe better brakes, better training, a reworked suspension, but it was never meant to be. A memo quietly circulated inside police departments, reportedly warning of the K-Code's unsuitability for pursuit use. The real reason? Insurance liability. All it would take was one crash, one lawsuit, one officer injured or worse. By late 1965, the program was shelved. The K-Code XP Falcons were quietly retired. Most were scrapped, a few may have slipped into private hands. Chapter 6. Why Ford even tried. So why did Ford go through all this trouble? Because in 1965, they were desperate to prove they belonged. GM Holden ruled the streets. Chrysler had muscle with its 273 and 318 V8s in the Valiant. Ford? Still seen as the underdog. The K-Code was already a legend in America, Carroll Shelby's weapon of choice. Ford Australia believed it could inject instant street cred into the XP Falcon and maybe win over the cops in the process. And in a way, it did. Just not the way they hoped. Chapter 7. What might have been. Here's the real tragedy. Ford was only a year too early. In 1966, the XR Falcon would launch, the first Aussie Falcon designed from the ground up for V8 power. It handled the 289 far better. Later GT Falcons, like the XY and XA, would go on to dominate Bathurst and become legends of their own. But the XP? It was never meant to carry that kind of firepower. Ford tried to turn a nimble city sedan into a highway predator, and the car bit back. Had they waited or upgraded the suspension and brakes, the HiPo XP could have been the first true Aussie muscle police car. Chapter 8. What happened to the cars? This is where the mystery deepens. Some say all 5 prototypes were crushed. Others believe 1 or 2 slipped out the back door, sold off quietly with no markings. A few collectors claim to own pieces. A top-loader transmission here, a K-Code block there. But no confirmed, fully intact XP HiPo police car has ever surfaced. No brochures, no public record, just rumours. And a few dusty test sheets hidden in archives. If even one of these cars still exists, it could be the rarest muscle car in Australian history. Chapter 9. The Legacy of a Banned Engine. The 289 HiPo didn't die. In the US, it powered Mustangs, Shelbys, Cobras. It tore up racetracks and became a motorsport icon. But in Australia, it never got a fair go. Not because it wasn't brilliant, but because the car around it couldn't keep up. It's a symbol of what happens when ambition outpaces engineering, when a great idea arrives just a little too early. And maybe, just maybe, it was almost the most fearsome police car Australia ever built. Chapter 10. The Forbidden Falcon. This wasn't just about safety, it was about control. Ford Australia was already pushing boundaries with the XR-GT, but the HiPo V8? That was a step too far, too soon. Police needed reliability, not unpredictability. And according to some insiders, Detroit wasn't thrilled either. Just as GM later sabotaged Holden's 308 V8, Ford's US executives didn't want an Aussie-built sedan outshining their Mustangs, so the K-code Falcon was buried. Chapter 11. Do you believe it? Had the HiPo Falcon entered service, it could have rewritten Aussie muscle car history. Instead, it became a ghost story. But if you know where to look, some say one of those cars still exists. Hidden, waiting, watching. Do you believe it? Let me know in the comments. Should Ford have unleashed the HiPo Falcon? And if you want more banned engines and buried secrets, subscribe now. Because next time, we're exposing the Holden prototype that GM destroyed before it ever hit the road. You won't believe what they were hiding.